Hey, everybody. So, I started the braided beard because I wanted to explore creativity in all of its forms. I think of myself as a creative person. I do a lot of creative and artistic things. I write, I paint, I play music, I make movies. But I've never really thought of myself as an artist. There's a lot of reasons for that, some of them probably more valid than others. But as I was doing some research for the site, I came across this book. It's called The Artist's Way. This is the 25th anniversary edition. And basically, if you haven't heard of it, it is a course in discovering and recovering your creative self. So I figured, in the spirit of transparency, and probably just because I need to do this, I'm going to take this course. Looks like it's about a 12-week, after reading the book, there's a 12-week journaling um, exercise that you go through. So I bought the journal as well. My goal here is to do this and to share as much of that process with you as I possibly can. Looks like it could get a little personal, so maybe I won't tell everything, but my hope is to post, do some writing, do some more follow up videos over the next 12 weeks. I got to get up early in the morning. It's the morning pages journal, so I am not a morning person. I'm also not a night owl. I like my sleep, so this could be challenging, but I'm committed to doing it because I think it's important to maybe understand why I don't see myself as an artist. And is that even important in the grand scheme of things? So hopefully you'll stick with me, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. I mentioned that I found the Artist Way when I was doing some research to start the website, wanting to look into my own creative process, the way my own feelings about my creations and art and all that. I didn't really do a whole lot of reading into the book before I made that initial video. I mean, the book's been around for 25 years, so there's also a lot of other people who've done it, quite a few videos online, but I didn't watch any of those either because I didn't want it to alter the way I look at it. So I got about, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages into the book, and I realized that pretty much the poster child for this program. It talks a lot about people that don't see themselves as artists and just why. So I think it's going to be an interesting process to go through. A little intimidating. It's some pretty heavy. I don't think you should go into this process lightly. Maybe I kind of bit off a little more than I could chew. We'll see. On a related note, as a part of that process, I'm now sitting here getting ready to go speak to my father, who I haven't spoken to in probably 15 years. Not to get too much into that personal story, but I do think it's a big part of the way I feel about how my artistic and creative journey has gone thus far, and how to kind of move past that and into another phase of life. Not sure how I feel about it just yet.
It has been a really interesting week, to say the least. I mentioned the thing about my dad, not to capitalize on the situation there. He has had some health issues, which prompted me in the middle of all this to reach out to him and go see him for the first time in 15 years, and it went as well as could be expected. But I brought it up because I think it's important in context of this whole program. And in the first couple of clips, I talked a little bit about how I kind of came into this blindly and really was just looking at for a way to go through a process to develop my own creative spirit and mind. Turns out, as I said before, pretty much the poster child for the program. In like the first 5 pages, she starts talking about people that are called shadow artists, people that sort of live in the shadows, they create in the shadows, they're artistic, they do artistic things, but they don't think of themselves as an artist for various reasons, which is part of the reason why we go through this, or I'm going through this. Is my relationship with my father is a pretty big part of that. She talks about synchronicity. Carl Jung, I think, coined the term synchronicity as a non-casual event in the external world which coincides with things in the internal world, feelings, dreams, thoughts, etc. So I found it really interesting that as I started this process very much sort of by accident, those synchronicities automatically started kicking off. And there's a decision that I had to make. My rational brain can say, well, those two things are coincidences. I started this path. This sort of situation with my dad arose. I can choose to believe those are coincidences, but I want to live in this moment and understand that as God or the creative spirit reaching out to me in a way to bring me into the reception of that. I remember a long time ago, I saw an interview, I think, with Tom Petty, and I'll butcher this, but he said something to the effect of somebody had asked him, how do you write songs that so many people connect with? And he just basically said, it's like there's a universal radio station, and I'm just tuning in and playing what it tells me to play. And that's very much the idea behind this, is that we are all creative beings, and that if we allow ourselves to tune into that spirit and that energy, the net will appear if we leap. The author mentions that in the book. Have the faith to leap, that if you do, the net will appear. So in doing so, I choose to believe that it's not a coincidence, and that these things happen for a reason. And the reason is I am and have been and continue to be called to be creative, and most importantly, and more importantly, I think, to share that creativity as a creative person, or as somebody that's going to tap into that. And if the idea is that we are basically antennas for the creative energy, then we also have to be amplifiers. We also have to give that back out into the universe, and hopefully somebody picks up on it along the way, and they start their own station, basically. Another sort of synchronicity that occurred, which was sort of mind-blowing to me and brought me to the place where I'm at today, is not only did the first 5 pages of the book address what I immediately said before I started reading the book, but the first chapter is about recovering your sense of safety. So everything is geared around making a space for yourself that you feel safe enough to not only create, but to share those creations. And it struck me that the situation with my dad and my own sense of safety, our relationship over the years has had a lot to do with that. Synchronicities do happen, and these things, you can give meaning to them that's not there, or you can choose to, I think, use them to your advantage. There are basically 3 elements of the program, 4 with the reading and the work that you do there. But the most important ones are the morning pages, which is basically a journal. You get up 30 minutes early in the morning and you write 3 pages of longhand, whatever comes to your mind. And then you don't read it, you put it aside. And it's just a way, I think, of evacuating everything in your head and helping you to deal with the sensors in your mind, the negativity, all the excuses for why you don't believe you're an artist, or why you don't think you're worthy, or why you don't think you're good, or why you shouldn't do things, all the negative aspects of the creative sort of process that I think all artists go through. And then there's also this concept called an artist date, which is basically you spending time alone in creative situations. This week, and also with everything going on with COVID right now, that makes that a little more difficult. And the third is there are various tasks that you have to complete each week, based on the reading that you do for that chapter, that are meant to help you understand where you're at currently, I think. In this situation, basically how you got to where you are, and then how you can begin to build a safer foundation around you, to where you can feel comfortable in not only creating, but bearing the responsibility of sharing those creations. And I think that, to me, is really one of the most important parts of creativity, and something that I've worked at before. Creativity begs responsibility, and that responsibility is to give that back. Again, if the idea is that the universe is a radio station and we're all antennas, receiving the creative energy and then amplifying that back out into the world, I think that is a crucial step. Is you got to share it. It's not always about who's the best artist in the room. I think it's important to know that everybody, I think, has that fear, and that you gotta have the faith that if you jump, the net will appear.